Today, the woman whose 911 call set off the controversy involving a Harvard professor and a Cambridge police sergeant is calling the flowers sent to her by Professor Henry Louis Gates, Jr. a, quote, gesture of gratitude. Gates sent along those flowers with a note to Lucia Whalen's home. There's no word on what the note said. Earlier this week, the tapes of the 911 call revealed Whalen never described Gates or his driver as being black. And today, Thursday's so-called beer summit is getting new attention on the op-ed pages of both the New York Times and the Washington Post. The New York Times' Bob Herbert writes, the President of the United States has suggested that we use this flare-up as a teachable moment, but so far exactly the wrong lessons are being drawn from it, especially for black people. The message has gone out to the public is that the powerful African-American leaders like Mr. Gates and President Obama will be very publicly slapped down for speaking up and speaking out about police misbehavior. Then in the Washington Post, Colbert I. King writes, unfortunately, Obama the politician trumped Obama the law professor, and he punted on the opportunity to teach an important lesson to the American people about the First Amendment, police powers, and citizens' rights. Let's bring in Carl Jeffers right now, political analyst and contributor with the Huffington Post. Good morning, Carl. Good to see you.
Hi, Alex. Great to join you again this weekend.
I'm glad you're here because I want to get your reaction to all this. Do you think the opportunity of the so-called teachable moment has been missed?
Well, first of all, let's say very clearly that the note that Professor Gates sent to the lady who called in on 911 was the best thing that he's done in this entire incident. She deserves accolades for how she handled herself, and she should not be receiving any criticism anymore that's directed to the so-called neighbor. It turns out she acted flawlessly, and that was exactly the proper conduct, and she demonstrated no signs of racism in how she called in that report. So, having established that,
no, I got to agree. That was a real class act on behalf of it. I mean, for him to put that out there, that was a good move. Anyway, agreed. So keep going.
Okay, well, you don't worry about that. No problem. The next thing is, in terms of the teachable moment aspect of this, listen, the problem now is that Professor Gates and Sergeant Crowley have moved so far beyond the reality of what we're dealing with in terms of the original problem, which is racial profiling, that they have really only become symbolic. I mean, frankly, Alex, within the year, Sergeant Crowley may very well resign and, frankly, join Sean Hannity and Sarah Palin on the lecture circuit, making speeches and making millions of dollars. Professor Gates, probably as a result of this, will never be racially profiled again in his life, whereas I can walk out of the studio and it might happen. And that's why it's so unrealistic anymore, what the experience is that they're having. I mean, Alex, when's the last time you know of any African-American or white American who was originally the suspect in a potential burglary or break-in and then ultimately winds up celebrating the event at a beer bus or beer festival at the White House with the president and the vice president of the United States in good company with the arresting officer? That doesn't happen.
It doesn't
and it
happen.
takes us off of the issue. Well,
but the thing is, there is a unique situation because the president did insert himself. It's also unique because the president of the United States is black. I mean, this whole teachable moment concept, do you think the whole country is looking at this situation a bit differently because the president is involved? I mean, are people giving this a harder look or not?
Well, actually, Alex, that's the part of this that I applaud. In other words, the beer fest was actually almost incidental. It was a peripheral action later on that only added celebrity status. When the president stepped in at the end of his press conference and made the comment, whether you agree with it or not, that the police actions in Cambridge, that the police department acted stupidly, it was that comment, Alex, that brought this issue back to the national forefront. It was dying as an issue, really, and that made it an issue for a national conversation. And it was fascinating to me that much of the media looked at the beer meeting at the White House and saying this hopefully will diffuse the issue. I don't want the issue diffused. I want to light a fuse on the national conversation that we need to have. And the president, by just stepping in, and only an African-American president would have likely have been able to do it in that way, has at least created the opportunity opportunity for us to have the kind of conversation that we need, not from skipping from one racial incident to the next, and then in the between letting things return to normal, but we need this conversation on an ongoing basis, Alex, so that reasonable people, you and I, can sit and we can talk about it, share grievances and concerns and misconceptions, and try to get a better understanding to bring all of us to better.
How best is it to get that out there? Do you do it on a federal level, a national level, or if you believe the saying that all politics is local and all situations being local, because you had these locals, okay, you had the president there as well, but these two men talking to each other, what the Cambridge Police Department is doing, they're having this seminar they're going to put out there, a forum to have people talking. Is that what you want to see more of, the local stuff or the national stuff?
I want to see every step.
All of it.
I want to see everybody stepping, all of us walking hand in hand, because that's the only way. This problem is so difficult to grasp, and it is so hurtful and painful, and has been essentially entrenched in the American culture of race relations for so long. And what's important, Alex, is that we enlist the generations of white mainstream independents, moderates, and liberals, and well-meaning Americans to understand that it's an important issue. The fact is, they were, at one point, people were arguing who introduced first the race issue, Sergeant Crowley or Professor Gates. My argument is, we don't give points for who introduces race first, or we don't take away points if we prove that you didn't. Race was in the issue of that incident before either one of them started talking to each other, and that's why we need to have a better understanding. I'll give you a specific example. The president, in the press conference, he made the issue a national concern by raising it in his comments. The next day, the president flew to Ohio. He had a town hall conference to talk about health care, and we need a lot more talk about health care because that's a very problematic issue for the president. At that town hall, he had the perfect forum to now start and launch the national conversation about race. A mixed audience, predominantly white, in a state that is very mainstream. We need that all over the country. You want to have beer fests? Fine. Let's open up the bars in America on Saturdays. Let's invite people in and let whites and blacks, let them, if they want to have beer and whatever else that they were serving the president and the vice president, serve that to everybody and start talking about it. And the best way to start is letting people start first with their grievances, Alex, the things that bother them about their images and stereotypes, and that's how we can start moving forward.
All right. I want to thank you for bringing the conversation, moving it forward. I can't believe it's only 7:25 where you are. You are up and ready to go. Carl Jeffers, as always, good to see you. Thank you.